Hi, this is Dr. Frank with the Church of Rational Truth. Today's topic is going to be building wealth slowly and going to retirement. This is, first off, not financial advice. I don't have fiduciary duty to you, so you shouldn't just take this as, oh, Dr. Frank, the church told me I should do this. There's many ways of saving to retirement. There's many ways you can plan to do it. There's many different investments. This is just one broad way many people could save to retirement based on just simple math. And this is a gross oversimplification, so please get a financial advisor, decide what is best for you in terms of your investing and how you want to save for retirement. This is just merely one simple option for people. I'm going to do this based on a number of hours worked rather than using actual numbers of dollars or pesos or yen, just because I don't have to want to convert back and forth between dollar amounts for retirements. That and everybody's retirement is different, and I think it's easier to relate it to people in terms of their annual salary and a percentage of their annual salary rather than saying, oh, $100,000, $1 million, $5 million, since that's not going to correlate with everybody. So one way of doing this is usually saving money early and as a percentage of your total income and putting that away, putting it into investments like stocks, bonds, ETFs, annuities, things like that, and getting a stable return on investment over a large number of years. And that is how most people retire. I took the example of trying to get your entire salary every year in your retirement. I used that as an assumption of what most people might want to do with their retirement because I figured if you're already living off your base salary, you would want to retire off your base salary. You'd probably want to get a similar amount because then you wouldn't have to change anything in your lifestyle and you wouldn't have to work at all and you'd make all that money. And I figured that's a pretty good goal for most people. Not everybody's going to have that goal. Some people might want even more. Some people might want even less. I think most people probably, once they retire, can probably live off less than their salary because a lot of their other expenses are paid for. They don't have kids. They don't have to pay for people to go to college. But this is why you have to individualize. But I use that as a kind of good goal because I figured, most people should be able to live off their salary if they're getting a free salary every year of their life. And that's kind of what the goal of investing is building up that passive income where you do not have to work and your money is working for you. I used a base percentage of about 4% return. Now, you might be thinking 4% return is really low, but I wanted to, one, use a very conservative estimate on what an investment could get. And two, I wanted to kind of take out the chunk that inflation is going to take out. So assuming that inflation is 2 to 3%, that would make the 4% investment closer to like 7-ish%, 6 to 7%, which is fairly reasonable for most investments. So this is a very conservative estimate. So I also didn't want people using a higher estimate of like 6% or 7%, and then later, 30 years going, oh, Dr. Frank, you told me I'd have a guaranteed nest egg if I did this, and then winding up way short in case the investments didn't quite hit it or inflation went crazy and took up a big chunk of that. So assuming 4% as a reasonable gain per year, I would say if people were to take about a quarter of their salary and save that in terms of investments, they should be able to retire in about 40 to 45 years. That's assuming that you would need about for every to get a salary, you'd have to save up about 50,000 hours of your working time to be able to do that. Because if you take 50,000 times 0.04, 4%, that gets to around 2,000 hours. 2,000 hours is how much people work in a general year, give or take. And so if you are able to save 50,000 hours of your time, then you will be able to retire, or at least retire on your salary, the same salary you're getting normally. That may seem insanely high to most people. If you do 50,000 hours, that's 25 full years of your working, and that's saving 25 full years the entire year, so you're living off nothing. So you're going to look at me and go, Dr. Frank, that's absolutely incredible. How could I possibly save that much? That is a ton and ton of money. Well, it doesn't have to be 25 full years if you're investing early, because you're getting that advantage of building the interest over time and building the interest over years. So if you do about a quarter of your salary and you do that every single year, that would be about 500 hours of your time per year going into savings, then it will take you, I calculated it out, you'll get there in 41 to 42 years. And that seems fairly reasonable to me in terms of when people should be retiring. Most people enter the workforce in their 20s. Most people retire in their 60s. So I think the average age of retirement in the US is 64. So if you started at 23 doing this every single year, at 64 you'll be able to retire and you'll be able to get your same salary every single year without working another day in your life. That to me seems pretty good. That is a lot of work, that is a lot of savings, but if you calculate it out, it's not a full 25 years of saving 100%. It's only saving 25% over 40 years. Do the math, it comes out to less because you're building up all that interest over time. What is the advantage of this? Well, I think it's fairly reasonable. I think hopefully people, if they live conservative, they can hopefully save about that much. It might be a lot, but the benefit is if you do more of it early, it builds up a lot more over time. It is really hard to come back and make up for lost time. If you skip 20 years of that, you also skip 20 years of that 4% interest on everything you've already put in. So that 20 years, instead of being 20 years of 20%, you're going to have to make up 20 years of 40 or 50%, and you're still going to be behind. So that's why it's so important to start early and with a large percentage, as large as you kind of can. You can kind of decrease that throughout the years, but really if you keep it steady or even increase it, it's going to get better and better. If you don't necessarily need that much, let's say you only retire on 50% of your salary. So let's say you've paid your house off, your kids are gone, so you don't have to pay for their food. That takes a whole lot less time. If you do that, you'd only have to save for about 28 years. So that cuts off a big chunk in terms of your retirement. Now you're going to get paid a whole lot less, but in case you are retiring early, or let's say you didn't plan that far ahead, let's say you're already in your 30s, well, this might be very reasonable, and that's still only with saving 20%. I mean, hopefully you can start saving more, but even if you, or 25%, if you just start then, well, you can still retire and you can still live pretty decently on that much. This also is not assuming that you're getting any kind of government funding or government pension. I don't want to assume for anybody out there whether they will get Social Security disability or some other government pension or a work pension, because it's not guaranteed, and I don't know where everybody is in the world. They might be getting a different amount or no amount. So I use this because this is probably the easiest to be able to do. Why don't people do this? Well, I think it's because nobody wants to get rich slowly. This is a slow and arduous process. People like very quick rewards. They want now a ton of money. This is a little bit of money over a very long period of time, but this is also how people build generational wealth. This is how people get rich for, I don't want to say millennia, but this is how people pass down their riches to their next of kin, and how families stay rich, is they take their investments, they're making them passive income every year, and they can just live off that passive income without touching the principal, and they still make a lot of money. You don't necessarily have to do this. That, and some people, when they retire, they actually start using the principal. So this is assuming you have 50,000 hours of work saved up and you don't touch that 50,000 that's being invested. But what's more common for many people is to take the percentage that's coming out as interest or as passive income, and then they also take a little bit of the principal to get paid a little bit more every year. The good thing about this, you get more money every year to spend, so you might be able to retire early. The negative is you're eating up your principal, so then every year you're getting less interest, and every year you're going to have to rely more on principal. And let's say you live longer than you were expecting to live in retirement, you may end up with then very little savings or not enough savings to sustain you. So that's kind of a dangerous game. It's one where you better hope you know how long you're going to live, because if you end up running out of all that savings, well, then you're kind of stuck with nothing versus a very stable amount every year, and then actually an inheritance to give your children or whomever you'd like to give. For me personally, I don't believe much in giving inheritances to kids. I hope that kids will be able to build their own savings. Some people want to give big inheritances, but that's up to each individual. If you do not want to give your inheritance to, or you do not want to have an inheritance or something to give to the next generation, that's your decision. You might want to do that as part of your planning for retirement, is saying, hey, I'm already at 70, I have many health problems, I don't think I'm living to 80, I can cut 10% of my principal every year, and it should be okay that I can live off that, and I can live a little bit better in retirement, knowing that I'm not going to necessarily need that saved up money, because I'm going to eventually pass away, and I can't really use that money when I pass away, so what's the point of having it in investments? But this is also why I say have a financial advisor, go with them, talk with them. I hope this is reasonable. People can modify this. You don't necessarily have to save 25%. You could save 20%, you could save 15%, you could save 10%. But the less you save, the longer you're going to need to retire, or the less you're going to end up retiring on. You can also do the opposite. You can save 30%, 40%, 50%. Some people save 75%, crazy amounts. And the benefit is, well, that takes that time down, or that builds you up a much bigger nest egg to retire on. It's all kind of about what your preferences are, what your life goals are, how you want to retire, what kind of lifestyle do you have when you retire. Do you want to have a bare bones lifestyle where you just kind of pay your bills and eat frugally? Or do you want to have a lavish retirement where you're golfing, where you're eating at fancy restaurants every week, where you're living a good life or a flashy life? Everybody's different. Not everybody has those goals. So you have to kind of look at your goals, start planning way ahead for retirement, and work on getting rich slowly. Yes, it doesn't sound sexy, but it's the easiest way to do it, and it's the way that's most guaranteed. You're taking the least amount of risk with doing, or I can't promise the least amount of risk, but you're taking a small amount of risk with doing this instead of trying to make a huge 10x return on investment or a giant amount out of nowhere. But that's it for this lecture. Thank you so much. I again am Dr. Frank with the Church of Rational Truth, signing off.